Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I believe most of us are. I can see Engineer James is here. You can also see Engineer Abira. So I think we can.
Good morning.
Morning very much, Engineer. So I think we can commence the meeting as others join in slowly. So for the past 3 weeks we had discussions. The running theme was to be or not to be an engineer. The guests who came on board, they had varied views on whether there's a point or there's worth pursuing engineering as a profession, that is from academia all the way to the class of consulting engineer. So we proceed on with the discussion. Now the focus is on those, the actual practitioners, the engineers themselves, and the issue here, the issue to be discussed is on the welfare of engineers themselves. So today it is the 28th day of November, the year being 2021, and the time is 10:04 a.m. East African time. Our guests for the day have Engineer Mwangi, James Mwangi, who has 35 plus years of experience, mechanical engineer. I believe he's a consulting engineer. He'll introduce himself some more. Then we also have Engineer Nancy Abira, our first lady guest here at the workshop. We are actually delighted to have you, Engineer. And yes, I believe you'll introduce yourself some more to the participants. So thank you very much. And over to you, Engineer Nancy. Kindly tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Engineer. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm a road safety engineer, civil engineer by practice, and transportation engineer. Currently I work largely in transportation consulting, and more, like I said, more to do with road safety. Yes, at the same time, I'm more interested in policy and related aspects. So I've rather been interested in taking more responsibility in engineering leadership, and such discussions, yes, impress me a lot. Thank you. I think we'll discuss more as we continue the discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Nancy. So to Engineer James, kindly introduce yourself. Of course, we know you, but
thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Engineer Namano. Firstly, let me say good morning to all participants on this beautiful Sunday as we head towards the end of the year. I also want to take this opportunity to thank those who have been organizing this workshop. I think it is critical that the young engineers are on this profession in this country. My name is Engineer James Mwangi. I think I'll just try and make it as brief as I can. I'm a mechanical engineer. Graduated many years ago, 36 years ago. And I worked for government for a few years. I went into manufacturing. I ended up in the oil and gas sector, and decided to go on my own 20 years ago. So I went into the world of consultancy, and I've been there. And whilst in the world of consultancy, I also went into advocacy. Advocacy is key in bringing conversations to the table. Because if it is not discussed, then it cannot be dealt with. And that's why I feel excited to be part of this particular workshop and to see young people using technology to further their career. And I think we will be discussing some more. In as far as advocacy is concerned, I have decided not to limit it to just national issues, not to limit it to just engineering issues, but also to plunge onto the global arena. And in so doing, take the voice of Africa to the global arena. And I think that is important. Otherwise, in the absence of your voice being felt or heard, somebody will craft an agenda, whether it works for you or not. So back to you, Bernard, and it's really a pleasure. Asante sana.
Okay. Thank you very much, James. Okay, so from just where you are, I think now we can proceed on with the discussion at hand. So this is an open discussion in itself.
Yep.
Everyone who's coming on board will just approach it as they see it. So from where you are, Engineer James, I'd like to ask, in your view, based on your experience, as you just said, what are some of the issues? Issues as far as the welfare of engineers is concerned? What are some of the issues that you've noted or you've picked up along the way that you see, need to be addressed?
One of the sad things is that the status of the engineering profession in society has gone down. It has diminished. It is no longer the prestigious profession for which many young people craved for, wanted to be. And it is very sad because engineering is very, very critical in the development of a country. Society, human development or improvement has been largely pegged on solutions, many of which are engineering solutions to benefit society. And in every facet of the society's life, there's engineering input. The importance of this input, the crafting of this input, the agenda of this input seems to have slipped out of the hands of engineers to other bureaucrats, other professions. Our space has been invaded.
Yes.
And sadly, we haven't put up what I would call a good enough fight to ensure that our space is not encroached or we expand our space. So in so doing, the welfare of the engineer is nowhere near what you expected. The remuneration of engineers, the opportunities that engineers get, especially in leadership, are diminished. The engineer is thought of amongst the last.
Yes, yes.
And there is a subconscious acceptance by engineer that it's okay. I think that's the biggest issue. You kind of accept and expect to be handed privilege, a position,
yes,
on account of using your title. It doesn't work. It won't work.
Yes.
And therefore, also the engineer must widen his or her thinking beyond the profession. And why I say this is because we are part of society. If we're not up there where these issues are being discussed and crafted, then we shall be recipients. We shall be recipients. And that would be very, very sad. So I feel that to go on to take it a bit further, the role of the local engineer in the current infrastructure development can certainly be much, much better. So the space is invaded not only by those amongst us in our society in this country, but also foreign participants. They have come in, they have taken space, and in so doing, it's going to cost this country a lot of money, because it largely means that every time you import a service, a product, in effect, you are exporting jobs, etc.
Yes.
So there are quite a number of issues, and many of them have to be crafted or put in such that they are sustained in terms of the solution that we want. So maybe that's what I can say in summary.
Okay. Thank you, Engineer James, for that response. So over to you, Engineer Nancy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Oh, quite refreshing. And I think also I more or less come from the same position that Engineer Mwangi came from, but then rather, I don't know, the discussion that we had, sorry, I didn't attend the one about why to be or not to be an engineer. But I think, Namano, the first thing when you want to talk about what are some of the welfare aspects that affect engineer, the big question, the initial discussion really comes to the fore, like, why are you actually an engineer? You see, because engineering is a profession like any other. You see, the moment the reasons why you want to become an engineer are not fully met, then of course we start having challenges and welfare issues, you see. So the first question, I more or less looked at it from a very personal perspective. Why Abira? Why Abira is practicing engineering, you see. And number one, the mere fact, not even mere fact, I mean the most poignant point is we practice profession for investment, you see. So if you feel what you put in as your financial investment is not being met, then already that becomes a challenge, you see. The second reason why people practice career, because career, I would not want to see career more or less as a job, right? Career, we want to look at it as bigger than a job. There's also the intangible gratification that we get from a career, you see. The things that we want to do for people, how we want to contribute, how we want to be seen in the public arena, you see. Also, that's the second thing. If that is not, you don't get that opportunity, even if how much money you got from being paid to do your job. You see, you're already starting to have welfare challenges, you see. Yes. And the last thing, this maybe specifically, maybe just to add on to what Engineer Mwangi is also saying, engineering is more or less about infrastructure development. Infrastructure development subsume all facets of social life, you see. So as an engineer, we also have the role of, public security and securing public investment, you see, and being accountable to the people. So again, when we don't get that opportunity and when we don't have that chance to do that, we start feeling the challenges of, the welfare challenges of engineering. So personally, I see them as three-faceted. Number one, in terms of investment, that is the money. You see how much you put in vis-a-vis how much you get out of it. Secondly, the opportunity to be present in the public arena, to contribute to discourse, to contribute to policy and national and regional discussions going on, and largely global. And lastly, the last one, our role to the public. Thank you.
So just from where you are, Engineer Nancy, so you've raised a couple of issues. I'd like to ask, of these issues, say you were to pick two, just two of those issues, and you were asked if you were given this particular issue to address. Say you have an interest in policy matters, so now you are a policy maker. And this is an engineering welfare issue. So how would you go about addressing it, from defining what the issue is all the way to resolving that particular issue? How would you do that?
I get you. Maybe I'll just highlight maybe two of the issues I see is a big problem. Like I believe now Engineer Mwangi will discuss like what you've said. So maybe I'll discuss two of the main issues that I feel are very poignant to practicing engineers within my area, maybe +10 or something like that, right? Allow me. Where +10, I'm actually overacting, but then don't even mention that. Yes, exactly. So number one, I think one of the major issues we have is diversification. That is the first very thing I feel is a challenge to the welfare of engineers. The inability to have the diversification of engineering. You see, this one, and this for me is very wide. Number one is geographical diversification. You see, I think our inability to export engineering sometimes, especially for my cadre of my peer of cadre, our inability to export engineering out of Kenya, so to speak. You see, it's countable. I think it's countable the number of engineers I can tell who've worked in South Africa, who've worked in Morocco, who've worked in Israel, who've worked in Canada. You see, something like that. You see, so most of our engineering practice is more or less localized within. You see, so even if there's an opportunity, even in Uganda, even if the opportunities in Uganda, we find it very difficult on how to get on a vehicle to get a job in Uganda. Maybe there's an assembly job. You see, right now they're trying to do electric maybe vehicles. You see, I saw also in Rwanda. You see, does a mechanical engineer in Kenya have this opportunity to tap into this?
Yes. Okay.
So number one is the geographical diversification. The second diversification is actually the diversification in practice. You see, because I think for a lot of time, this one I don't even want to say it's an institutional problem. I think it's also how we've been framed to think, in a very straight-jacketed, in a very narrow way of what, say, for example, I'm a civil engineer, of what civil engineering is. From school, I know I need to know Civil 3D and AutoCAD, you see. But then have I considered maybe going to talk to the people in the village about how the road impacts them? Is it civil engineering per se? You see, right now maybe I'm practicing road safety engineering, but have I really considered from school that this is an area I can explore? You see, so these things come more at the tail end. You see, like later on when you've done 10 years, then you see, I can pursue policy. I can do economics. You see. But yet straight from school, you can't imagine someone can become a transport economist simply because they did mechanical engineering, or a road safety engineer because they did mechanical engineering, you see. Yes, so this diversification fails. And so because of it, we all go through a narrow pipe. And when there's no resources within the narrow pipe, we let anything, any lush grass that is on the side, to let maybe other cows eat it, other than, I'm not referring, let me leave the cow analogy alone, yes. Lastly, this is rather very local, but it's an issue that we have to discuss all the time. You see, that engineering in Kenya must go beyond civil engineering, you see.
Yes, that is actually true.
Even despite the anything else, that moving forward, we've already done a lot, but moving forward, we must be very strategic to bring in the less known. You see, the aeronautical engineers, the biotechnical, the medical engineers. We must be very strategic and actually bring them to the fold. So any strategy that we work on diversification should cover those three areas.
What engineer Abira you raised was actually raised by engineers who are on the workshop here. I think the last session that we had, the issue of diversification came up from engineer Adai. It also came up from engineer Auma. Actually, there was a general rally or a call to diversify what engineering is, because as far as Kenyans know, engineers are civil engineers. Everyone else is just a technical guy.
Engineer Nancy is right. The engineering training trained conveyor belts. It trained the people to give engineering solutions on a belt. It never ever widened why in the first place. Who are you and what do you do to society? Let me tell you, So we come out straitjacketed, and it has taken some of us a long time to realize that there is much more to engineering, or much more that engineering can do in a country. And let me say this, the game starts at policy level, government policies. Where do you want this country to go? Engineer Nancy has talked about, let's say, electrification of vehicles. Where do we want to go? My experience is that engineers hardly, for one reason or the other, see the importance of taking their thinking and input at the policy level. So you'll find the engineer doesn't participate much in the policy making, unless probably is an employee of the ministry. So therefore, policy is crafted, strategies are crafted, action plans are crafted, and then the engineer comes in at the tail end of now implementing whatever infrastructure is required. And by that time, Engineer Bernard, even the budget has been done. So the engineer is being told, work with this.
Yes.
No, and then you're even told, work with this time. Yes. So the engineer tend to be people who are given things. You're given small confines to come up with solutions. And then even when that solution is done, at the official opening, you don't even get an invite. You're no longer relevant and whatever. It's not a question of how much you talk about something.
Yes.
It's a question of whether what you talk about goes to the right place and is embedded in an instrument, so that it is sustained. So it should not be a free gift at what our engineer. No, it has to be put inside.
Yes.
A policy, a piece of legislation, a framework, a regulation, anything, so that it doesn't become something which is somebody's wish. So what am I trying to say? If I look at today, the infrastructure development, we're talking about climate change, how much input do we give? Our experience in this land, we're talking about issues to do with, let's say, local content. How much input do we give? Some of us have gone out of their way to give input and to undo what I would call would be damaging clauses that would work against not just engineers, but also even local Kenyans. So my take is that I think we need to have a deliberate mechanism to open up the minds of engineers so that they can embrace many other aspects of life and understand their role in society. Today, the Big Four agenda talks about universal healthcare. Wouldn't there be engineering in there? You talk about food security. We have agriculture. We have implements. We have technology being used. You talk about what? Manufacturing. This country, manufacturing is going down. It is incredible that we're now importing stuff from Uganda, amongst other places. And we are being told that manufacturing is contributing somewhere in the region of 7, 8, 9% of GDP. And the Big Four agenda was talking about 15%. So what will give you that 15%? Do we have the capacity? Then housing. I mean, surely, if housing, we are not taking a lead role, then I don't know. So what am I trying to say? When these policies are crafted, do we then come back and say, hold on a minute, how do we align, how do we plug into this? And then how do we get opportunities? How do we secure significant participation of locals in driving that agenda? Right now, as I mentioned, I think you remember, engineer, last time when we were talking about advocacy, I said we are in a campaign mode in this country, although that is permanent in this country, but now we are in serious campaign mode. What will go into the manifestos of these guys that concerns us? How are we going to say, look, we are here? Somebody is going to talk about, I'll have this agenda, I'll do this. And you have all these statements flying. But how will they achieve it if it isn't through people like engineers, etc. So what are the two issues that I see? I see, first of all, the opportunities that go to engineers or should go to engineers as captured in the different pieces of legislation, key amongst them, local content. That must be secured. The implementation of the legislative requirements of local content is a priority, because today I sadly state that in many of the projects, these targets are not being achieved, which then means the opportunities are very few. And I better say this, in international tenders, in the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, they talk about international tenders, 40%. Leave the ones that are put aside for locals. 40% by contract sum should be local content. So when you hear a huge tender of billions, even if you just take 10 billion, 40% means that 4B should stay here, minimum. And I'm not quite sure that I have seen any mechanism in government that will give statistics to confirm that local content is there. So I'm trying to say, firstly, is the opportunities. You cannot have a misalignment between what the industry needs and what is coming out of universities, both in terms of quality, skills, and numbers. You can't produce 2,000 and the opportunities are 200. You can't produce this skill, yet it is not required. And I keep seeing this. So alignment between industry and academia in as far as creation of skills is concerned is key. Secondly, to enhance opportunities, amongst others, is the strict implementation of local content requirements. I'll add a third one, being the fact that this country also needs to put in some money in capacity building for innovation, not in engineering skills, but an environment that will allow young engineers create solutions so that the word jua kali doesn't continue. It's not a good word, jua kali. How can we have jua kali yet we have so many engineers who went to school? Surely.
Yes.
Are these engineers able to craft better solution and to work with their brothers, the technicians, the artisans, to have manufacturing plants? Thank you.
You raised the issue of local content. Now, just again, I'm making reference to our previous conversations. Okay, the recordings are online.
Okay.
The thing, the issue of local content was raised by, I believe, Engineer Dai. Recently, a couple of months ago, there was a bill in Parliament. There was a push to have 40% local content in all engineering works and projects being undertaken in this country. But the bill was shot down. I think it never even went past the committee stage. So the reasoning behind the bill being brought down was that it came down to quality. The discussion was that by enforcing the concept of 40% local content, we may, in the long run, end up compromising on the quality of the work that is delivered by these foreigners. Actually, that was the reasoning behind it. So I'm bringing you back to this and asking you, Engineer, what is your take? If the bill was to come back to Parliament, what would you have to say?
I don't know what the wording is, but I know one thing.
Yes.
In the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, there is a clause that expressly states 40% of the contract sum as local content, and it defines what local content or what a local person is, etc. Yeah. That you can have men and women in the August House claiming that our people cannot have quality. So let me ask, so if you don't give the opportunity, where do we buy this quality?
Yeah.
It's not something that you can walk into a supermarket and say, okay, you need to nipimie nusu kilo ya quality. Quality is achieved through experience. And therefore, you know that there's something we call affirmative action. Affirmative action means that you're giving privilege to a group that has not had the opportunity to participate in something. And you say, we are going to carve these for them so that they can learn.
Yeah.
How can you have such a huge infrastructure budget? And all you're worried about is quality. Are you worried about how much money leaves this country? So to me, some of these actions are not negotiable.
Yeah.
These actions must be enforced, because don't tell me America was developed by foreigners per se. Don't tell me that China was developed by foreigners going into that country and building. They built it because they were allowed to build capacity, make mistakes. Part of the cost of development is the cost of mistakes that are made, not deliberately, mistakes so that we learn. Tunaunda ndege, inaanguka, we do a better one next time. It will kill a few people. But we cannot be saying we buy all the time. Therefore, I don't know the exact wording of that local content clause of 40%, because I think maybe there could be something. But my take is, not only should we be talking about implementing the 40 in the international tenders, etc. Actually, we should be having a time within which it goes to 60. You should have a program. Then it will go to 80, then 100. Then you can open it after we are good, because then we shall also be exporting our services and goods.
Yes.
Are we together? You cannot have, you cannot be having a football stadium that is built with your money, built by others, and it is yours, and you must go in and still pay to watch. I don't know whether that makes sense. Therefore, my view is, and which I don't see a lot in our country, is patriotism. We don't have this feel that this country is so dear to us. We love it so much that we're willing to do anything. So we accept subconsciously to be not first class.
Yes.
To say that first class belongs to others. And the one thing I want those who are here today and those who will listen to this conversation,
Yes.
I would like you to feel that it is within you to give service to this country, so that the motivation of why you're doing what you're doing, including what you're doing right now, Engineer Bernard, is a service to society, first and foremost. That it is part of the purpose of your life to give service to society. It is not about what's in it for me. It might be what's in it for your children, if it is not you. But you do it. They say the best service is when you give expecting nothing in return. You are not doing it because kuna contract inakuja. No, you're doing it because it is the right thing. Whoever gets the contract ni sawa sawa. So what I would like to do is to encourage, as we think about improvement, whichever option that we're going to, do it knowing it is the right thing. Do it for others. For those who may not have the skill, the courage to say it openly, do it for them. That's how this country became liberated. Government's funds are not enough to develop the country. Yeah. And one of the ways to accelerate development of a country is using private sector money.
Okay.
And allowing private sector to bring in and invest money, and invest in infrastructure or utilities that would otherwise be developed by the government. So there's what we're calling the Public-Private Partnership Act. There's a new one that is being signed by the president. It will allow a private developer to say, okay, nitajenga hii, what have you, but he needs his money back. isn't it? So there will be, we are paying for some convenience that way, because we would then have to wait for that road for the next 30 years when the government will have money. So to me, I don't think there is anything wrong with that, as long as the cost of that infrastructure is reasonable and the rate of return is reasonable, and there is value for the users. There is value. So that's what I would say. Thank you. When the third president of the Republic of this country was sworn in, His Excellency Mwai Kibaki, he noted that to drive the agenda of government, or he knew, private sector has to be involved. Private sector will create opportunities for jobs, will create wealth, will pay taxes, and the country can develop etc. So I believe His Excellency Mwai Kibaki, being the economist he was, he wanted to create that atmosphere and infrastructure development, not only in this country, but many other countries, including the United States of America today. The most important bill right now of President Joe Biden is the infrastructure bill, which will have an enormous amount of money. So His Excellency Mwai Kibaki requested, and he said, look, everybody from private sector is coming. Wanakuja na sijui association gani, we want this. Another guy comes, we are so-and-so, I don't want to name them. We are so-and-so, we want this. So-and-so, we want this. And I think the president realized, and the leadership then, that you cannot, who are you talking to?
Yes.
Because today, and then some of the things that are being requested are at cross purposes with others. So you find that there is no alignment of common issues or common proposals or common agendas. Yeah. And that is why he said, can you guys go back and create a vehicle that can talk to government, a private sector vehicle, where you first thrash out your issues,
yes,
and you come with the overarching proposals or agenda that can then fit into the government agenda, etc. And that was very, very critical. And that is how Kenya Private Sector Alliance was born. It has got over 500 membership associations and corporates and whatever. And today, it has what we call convening power. It actually can request for meetings all the way to the highest power in this country.
Back to you, Engineer Abira.
Yes.
You said you had two issues that you'd like addressed. You raised the first one, that was diversification of the profession.
Yes, diversification, and the next one. Okay, so I take over to the next one.
Yes, kindly do.
Okay, I think the next one, though, even Engineer Mwangi, when he was discussing. So the next question, the next issue that I think is a major issue is the vehicle. You see, because number one, I feel as the engineering fraternity, as a society, number one, we are very much aware of what the challenges are.
Yes.
We may not know in entirety, let me say so, but we have a very good feel of what the opportunities and the solutions are. You see, so then someone asks, because we've been discussing some of these issues years on end, you see, yeah. Why are we not ticking off, this is done, this is done. We said this was an issue, education was an issue, this is done. We said standards was an issue, this is done. We said in electrical, this was an issue, this has been done. In manufacturing, this was raised as an issue 7 years ago, this has been done. So why are we not ticking points? You see, why do we keep coming back to the same thing year and year? We need to change the education, we need to improve this, you see. And is it that we lack a vehicle? You see.
Yes. Okay.
Everyone is at the same level, struggling. You see, like maybe when you put, is it mice or frogs in a container, you see, and every frog is trying to hop, you see, but you can only hop 2 steps and hop back. And everyone is hopping and everyone is pulling, then no one gets up. You see, and so maybe that's the way we need to move with the discussion. Do we have an adequate and efficient vehicle? Is the vehicles we have serving the purpose? If not, do we need, number one, to strengthen the existing vehicles, or do we need to create a new vehicle altogether?
I like what Engineer Nancy said. Do we have this vehicle? Do we need a new vehicle? Do we need, if we take the two scenarios, the existing vehicle, do we need to rejig it, give it a new purpose, or give it impetus, craft a new roadmap using that vehicle? Because you can, if you go alone today as Engineer Bernard and try and walk into the office of the Minister for Transport Infrastructure, etc.
Yes.
Even the askari downstairs will look at you and dismiss you.
Yes.
And if you are lucky to even go to a floor up there, you'll be extremely lucky. For you'll be, the most you'll be doing is see somebody else. Because what government and other critical bodies like to see is an organization. It has got a status, etc. So I'll tell you something. There is an existing vehicle which can be rejigged. What do I mean by that? It's to first of all look at the constitution of this organization. It is there. What needs to change? What do you propose to be changed? How do you want it to be changed? How do you justify change? We recently had the strategic plan. Previously, the strategic plan, when I was going into that election, was not existing. Or rather, the one that was there was already outdated. It had no purpose. If the leadership doesn't recognize the purpose of having a strategic plan, then you wonder, where is this organization headed? So there is an existing vehicle, there is a strategic plan. Can it be improved? Certainly. Everything can be improved. And there are many things that I think are not difficult to improve in the current organization. You have the option of having a new vehicle, call it whatever you want. Then you have to go through the mechanics of creating a brand for that vehicle. You have to go through the mechanics, and you must be ready to show that indeed this vehicle, I'll call it special purpose vehicle, is crafted to address issues that are not being addressed elsewhere.
Yes.
But to me, if you are able to work with the vehicle that exists, improve it,
Yes.
then you have a better opportunity because it is an institution, it has brand, it has recognition. But you're not confined if it is not working for you. I would never tell anybody be started lala up on baka who is 60 years like me. No. Sometimes you would like to say, okay, fine, this to this. Is it possible? I think it is possible to rejig the existing institution that we have. It has many members, etc. I know that the young people are saying, what about our right to vote?
Yeah.
So how do you agitate for that? There's a constitution. It says something. Can you change it? Who will help you change? Who will help you change? It is those who are already corporate who can vote. Because if you can't vote, you can't change. Yeah. So you will look for a roadmap, strategize, and see, how do I get these people? And they're not all old. They're not all like me, Bernard. Kuna wengine kama wewe, Bernard, you're not old, and others who I'm sure will probably side with your thinking. But I can go into the details of that. But I'm just saying it is possible. And I think the vehicle of IK today is certainly not the vehicle that was there previously when we were going for this campaign. When we felt, I felt, you know, badala ya kusema nani atasimama, sometimes you have to say, itasimama hata mimi. Yeah, you know, don't wait. You say, I'll go for it. You win or lose, fine. But I'm going to put create a point. So there is an opportunity there. I think it has turned in the right direction. It can be improved, yes. And that's why we are going to look at leadership coming in, going, etc. And we must be very careful of who we put in leadership. Yeah. And we must have a system of mentoring people to become leaders and have a blend. Make sure there's good representation of young people because we need new ideas. Thank you.
I think one of the sessions we should actually discuss what if mentorship should just be technical, or we should, you see, mentorship in engineering. Yes, exactly. Because teaching me the technical skills, but then the actual mentorship of leadership, maybe I think that's also part of mentorship we should consider. Yes.
Correct. In fact, not just mentorship in terms of those other soft issues, it's also in leadership particularly.
Yes.
I'm running a farm. I can't run that farm until I don't know what age. Young people will come, and people even sell shares. Today, companies are started by people. Then they outlive. So we need to mentor them, business skills, HR skills, and other things like that. But I think, Engineer Nancy, is that maybe we have not been deliberate enough in imparting those skills that matter so much in society. And like somebody had asked, and it was like Engineer Bernard has said, we were never taught those skills. The people who prepared the curriculum were producing, like I said, conveyor belts for products. They were not producing the brain of the manufacturing plant per se. So you imagine where we would be today if we had a good priority on those other soft skills and what have you. What would stop us from having even the presidency of this country? I know we are not, there's a chance that we will get it, whatever, but all I can say is that it tells us that if we change our thinking, enhance our scope, the opportunities are timeless. There are many. Thank you very much. What I have noticed in advocacy is, like I mentioned earlier, you have to change the constitution, the bylaws, the statutes, legislation, nini. So what I noticed is that even the clamor of multipartism in this country ended up in revision, modification, updating of the constitution. So that, like I said, it is not a favor somebody is doing you, and that they can take away from you when you don't seem to be in good terms. So let me say this. There's an existing body here. It has a constitution. We like part of it. We may not like part of it. Can we identify it? Can we give an alternative? Can we justify? Can we market it? You look at last year's AGM. How many, first of all, how many members, voters are there in this particular organization? X, maybe 5,000 or something. How many vote? So you go to the vote tally, probably 2,000 or something. You need these guys. So how do I craft and market or sell my idea? It is always based on value. It is always based on sincerity. And I believe the young people are sincere. So to me, you have to be, what I'm trying to say is that you have to be deliberate. You have to be strategic. We realize one thing when you're dealing with government. If you go in an abrasive fashion, my friend, you never get any far. You are stopped. The next time askari is even given you a picture, you're never going to go there. So let me just say that it's got to be deliberate. It's marketing strategy. Then you bring change. And always participate, like in the strategic plan. Always participate in those plans. And then hold people to account. Thank you.
I'm under the impression that you watched the previous sessions. Engineer Abira, is that correct? How do you say you haven't? Because you see, the line of reasoning and the way you're approaching issues here is actually the very same way previous guests on the workshop here were doing. So unless there's something else to add, I believe we can now take a couple of questions, say one or two from the audience that is present to the guests. Then we can conclude the discussion after that.
I could probably give my question because I was trying to type it.
Yes.
And I do agree in a big way with the conversations of the panelists. I think those are great insights.
Yes.
But when someone wants to initiate change, like what Engineer Mwangi has advised, say through constitutional methods,
Yes.
sometimes if such attempts are done, and they are frustrated at the leadership level, for instance, you see, if you want to have that constitutional change to be voted upon, the vote comes much later. You have, for example, to get the sitting council to do as the constitution requires, for example, to call for that AGM or that SGM. What if they choose not to call for it? What if they choose to ignore? What if they choose to come up with some other mechanisms of controlling the outcome of the conversations outside and probably divergent from what proponents are using, again, methods that are not necessarily constitutional. You see, the constitutional methods is they need to convince and they elect the constituency to vote so that they can vote differently. But sometimes they can use other unconstitutional methods like muting the proponent and then asking someone to say, I propose, I second, then they just pass without having to go through the process.
Yes.
Your comments?
Engineer Howard, I do not have a textbook response to you. I identify with you. You and me have gone to court because we felt if we followed what we would call constitutional means, we had no chance. And we also saw, some of us, or came to learn of how even when you go to court, there is no guarantee that you'll get justice. But we must try. But all I can say, Engineer Howard and my brothers and sisters, if in your opinion, somebody is using what I would call unethical or any illegal means, the only thing I would say, don't be like them. Because two wrongs will not make a right. In fact, I am an admirer of the gentleman who was called Martin Luther King Jr., who drove an agenda. And he kept saying that power yields nothing without demand. So there has to be a level of agitation. You have to wake up the conscience of even the voters, because what I find is that the voter in institutions, in countries, feels that they only have a cardinal duty of casting a ballot. And then they leave it there, not being too concerned about what actually happens and whether the promises that were made are actually kept. There seems to be no mechanism. People don't have interest, etc. Many of them because they are comfortable or they have a fair level of comfort and they don't want to rock status quo. So for now, what I can say is that through forums such as this one, what you're doing is a critical thing of waking up the conscience of the profession so that people start being more actively involved, hopefully go ahead and ask for more governance. And this is across our society. It's not just an issue of particularly engineers. We have to continue that agitation. We have to want to have governance and other things like that. We are still not there. It is going to be a journey. But giving up is not an option. You continue at it, waking up the conscience, see how people can demand accountability, etc. That's the best answer that I can give for now. But I hear you. I hear you. We have walked that path. And don't stop.
Something I've always also thought, like as drivers of the vehicle as we are, Namano, Howard, Engineer Mwangi, Abira, Wellington, Diego, everyone else. sometimes I ask, is there additional skill sets that we require as engineers to drive some of this agenda? You see, is there a specific skill set that also as engineers we should drive upon members to acquire, to attain? You see, say for example, Engineer Mwangi says he worked a lot in advocacy. Has there been a specific skill set he had to acquire to be able to actually undertake this? You see, Namano, I know you as a lawyer additionally, you see. Has it helped your agenda in your discussion? I know someone like Howard is very big on things to do with arbitration and everything else. Does it come in handy in trying to define a vehicle and actually drive? Because we can actually have the vehicle as we say, you see, but then do we have people to drive this? You see.
Engineer Nancy.
Yes.
You raise very important points. Tulisema ya kwamba engineer anafundishwa uhandisi and he's not told why. He's just told that you calculate like this and you do ABCD and you have that product. But how it fits in and why it is even happening, the person does not have that level of awareness. So one, I think we need to start off by having the engineer appreciate their role in society. So there has to be a kind of awareness campaign of who are you in society and what does your work, how does your work influence society or impact society? Number two, in the event that you feel that what is you're getting and your role is not being appreciated or you're not being given space enough to execute your role adequately, then we go into advocacy. Advocacy means I need to take my voice. I need change. And that's why we had that engagement last week, which I remember Engineer Namano, I said, I'm ready to do it again. So I'm beginning to think, arising from Engineer Nancy's questions, we have to broaden the thinking of the engineer so that he appreciates. We need engineers to regain their self-confidence, yes, to feel that they count, to feel that they are worth. I'm not talking about worth in money. I mean worth in terms of what society thinks of them. So to me, I believe it is important to go through some critical thinking of additional skills. Soft skills za kuandika, sijui etiquette, nini, they are good. I mean, they just, but what's the impact of them beyond you personally? It's very limited.
Diego, what would you like to ask or what would you like to contribute to the discussion?
Thank you, Engineer Namano. I think my question I'd like to raise to Engineer Mwangi. Engineer Mwangi, you have been a civil servant, I assume?
No. No, I've been actually a private sector person.
Or throughout your career?
Only I was in the civil service for about 2 years.
Okay.
Yes.
So now my question would be, for some of us in the civil service, how would you approach some of these conversations? Because, you know, we are tied with the code of ethics and things of the sort. You can't be radical there. So how would you approach for those of us in the civil service? But also have a desire to change?
Howard can assist Engineer Mwangi.
Maybe yes, Howard is a senior civil servant, so you can probably, but let Howard say, and then I'll just comment as a Kenyan.
Yes.
Engineer Howard.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I really don't think that the code of ethics really stops you from participating in any public discourse as a citizen, because the code of ethics is not superior to the Constitution. The Constitution has got a section called the Bill of Rights, which protects you to exercise your Bill of Rights, freedom of expression, freedom of association, and all that kind of stuff. And you will realize that the Constitution actually elevates the articles on Bill of Rights above so many other pieces of legislation. Even when you go to court, consider like what we call the Willy Mutunga rules. Initially, people used to circumvent, the law so that they can infringe on your rights. But with the Willy Mutunga rules, he has made it difficult for people, for example, to use matters of procedure to disappoint substance, especially when it's touching on rights. So what I could say is that what you might be dealing with might be just the fear of the unknown, but there is no cause for you to fear as long as you are doing whatever you're doing within the confines of the Bill of Rights. It protects you, and it's in terms of hierarchy of laws, it is protected by a legislation that is much higher than a code of ethics. Code of ethics comes way below the Constitution, then the Act, then the rules and regulations, and then the code of ethics. It's much lower down there. It's also it's good, even as you do this, of course, you will also be keen that you do not deliberately and consciously offend that code of ethics. But I just want to give you the encouragement that yes, you are protected by the law to engage, to participate, to associate, and to express yourself.
Thank you very much, Engineer Howard. You have put it in a very good way, citing the fact that the law itself, the supreme law of this land, protects you. And the reason it protects you is to allow you to do what is right. What I can tell you, Bwana Yego, is that sometimes you will join an organization, an institution, with very deeply embedded culture. Hapa kunaendanga namna hii. You don't follow any rules and kunaendanga. So it's maybe word of mouth or generations of employees who have passed down a certain culture and expectation. But you're in this new reality of life as it is today, with technology that has disrupted the way we live and think. And what I can say is that you don't have to wait for anybody to bring positive change. Positive change is an internal element coming out. So it is what we call an inside-out approach. If you're doing whatever you are doing and you know how to do it, and if you don't know, you ask, but still you are confined with the procedures that are established, and even sometimes you are free enough to give suggestions as to how to improve because you want to do good. You may be disliked at the beginning, but people will certainly, it is likely that people will appreciate. There is nothing that stops you from standing out, from being the kind of person or that society respects and admires. So you may be in the civil service today. You may be finding it difficult. You may want rapid change. But let it start by you. And as you become senior, you'll probably get to understand better and better. I must tell you one thing. Even though I've worked in this private sector for all those many years, because of advocacy work, I found myself interacting with the public servants. And I can tell you there are very, very many good and well-meaning public servants that I've met. They are the engine of this country. They keep this country going. They are known. They are not publicity seekers. They're out there, but somehow in their conscience, even with a limited remuneration, they somehow keep this country going. Of course, in the midst of them would be some that are perhaps not aligned with those positive aspirations of the country. So what I'll tell you, Yego, is continue thinking, continue doing what is right, continue coming for these kind of conversations that Engineer Bernard and others are facilitating, having the conversation, learning, etc. And be that person wherever you work who starts driving a small change. If we have enough of us, this country will change and change positively and quickly. Thank you.
I'll go to the comments section, the chats, and I can see a couple of questions here. Cedric, thank you for the positive comments. Cedric. And then there's a question from Dennis Moniki. He says, in the last week's conversation, all agreed a big portion of the Kenyan engineer stem from the Public Procurement and Assets Disposal Act. What steps do we take as the participants of the workshop 254 to institute resolutions to this one problem? What practical approach is there that we can actually influence in the forum to start a deliberate conversation? Then there's also another one. There's another question. The conversation is high, but is there the will? We can talk, and nothing happens. Let's consider moving it a notch higher. That is from Wellington Abwok. So I believe if the guests will allow me, I can respond to the two questions as we conclude the conversation. Kindly. The whole idea behind the workshop is not just to convene conversations, or for us to just discuss and then leave matters as that. That actually has been the issue. That has happened for years, I believe for the past 5 or so years. But now the workshop, the whole essence is to engineer the conversation. So the content that is discussed here gets distributed on multiple online forums. The workshop 254, that is the handle. But that is just one avenue. Once we conclude a discussion, come to the final conclusion, like what we did with the last theme, we will also be releasing a magazine. All the conversations we've had, all the discussions we've had, all that content will be summed up, it will be compressed and distributed in the magazine. We'll be doing this, we'll release the first magazine by mid next month. So that one will just be a magazine dedicated to what the first issue was, that is to be or not to be an engineer. So this way, what we seek to accomplish here is to distribute our concerns and our inputs to as far and as wide an audience as we can reach. And one way, and one step at a time, just slowly, we as engineers in this particular country, we will now start re-engineering or reinventing the way conversations have been held and have been run in our space. So that is from our end as the workshop. We are working on that. So not to worry, Abwok and Wellington. Wellington, not to worry, and also to Dennis, we have you on this one. We will do more than just talk.
I can hear
Yes.
the high sense of urgency of the youth. And rightly so. The anxiety when people look forward and look at and wonder, what is my future as an engineer? So people become restless. And I think societies, when there is something that is disturbing them or is pain to them, they become restless. And right from whether it is this country becoming independent, people became restless. Whether it is people agitating for a plural democracy, more than one party, people get uncomfortable, agitation for a new constitution, and many other things. So maybe people now are clamoring to see action, as you rightly have summed it up, Engineer Bernard. Now you are looking at creating a platform, a forum, an action group that will start converting this talk into action. I would say consider the following, because you need to hasten the process, because like I said, there is a severe sense of urgency. I would say this, within the instruments that are available to us and affect us directly. One, IEK Constitution, I know it was undergoing a change. I don't know how much input this group has given. Number two, the Engineers Act 2011, which I know the regulations came out in 2019, and now there is the scale of fees to see whether there is a case for improvement. I say this approach has to be an approach where you're not a wandering generality, you are a meaningful specific. Zig Ziglar said that. Do not be a wandering generality, be a meaningful specific. So this constitution, as one of the angles, because you have a multi-pronged approach. You're going through the constitutional method, you're going through maybe other legal methods. So dissecting the constitution, being specific on what needs to be changed and why. So you have a document, a matrix, whatever. That's what we do at KEPSA. We actually go to the clause and say this one that has a negative impact, you describe it. We suggested it be changed this way. This is the impact, this is the value. And therefore, when you go to any discussion, and by the way, you will have also identified to who you want to have this conversation. The act, the constitution, any other instrument that affects the engineering profession. We can talk about local content. There is a policy that exists. I was involved a lot in the Energy Act, Petroleum Act. We put in local content. Unfortunately, the enforcement is not being achieved. But they are meaningful things. And to me, if Engineer Bernard and the team that is spearheading this, because you must have a team that will spearhead this, and I'm sure you do. People, when you start seeing something meaningful, then I think the perception will even improve. So you're doing a good thing, and I'm just suggesting some areas to try and see if we can have faster results. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Engineer Mwangi. There's a quiz from Nyagaka. As we agree that policy is important in changing nations, but I wonder, what does the education have to do with all this? Is it sufficient how the engineering education is structured to equip the engineer to handle matters of policy and the larger picture of the economy? I feel like we fail from the education level, building workers and maintenance experts, leaving matters policy to other people. Nyagaka, I don't know, maybe you came in late, but Engineer Mwangi actually addressed this issue conclusively. The same was supported. Engineer Abira also had some input on the subject. So this recording will be shared in Nyagaka, and you can review it. The answers to your concerns and questions are actually there. In fact, this was actually one of the first issues that was raised. So, good people, I believe we've come to the end of our discussion for the day. It was short in a sense, but to let others attend to other issues, we'll have to conclude the discussion with that. So thank you very much for attending, and have yourselves a blessed and Sunday and week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Engineer Mwangi, your contributions, your suggestions will be actualized.
Yeah. One thing I can say in departing, and I always keep repeating,
yes.
For those who are Christians, funerals, there's a eulogy. Historia wako na ya mtu. I have never seen a list of title deeds there, or bank account balances, or debt. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
It is how you impacted. those who are close to you, even society.